Hello and welcome to my NFL Draft Scouting Report video series. Today the prospect we'll be looking at is North Carolina quarterback Mitch Trubisky. So to start off with this prospect, we'll begin by looking at his strengths. Starting off with the measurables, Trubisky is about 6'2", 220 pounds, listed officially at 6'3", but we'll find out soon at the combine. But it sounds like he'll measure in around 6'2", we'll say. He's pretty well built with a good frame at 220-ish pounds, so you don't worry too much about his ability to absorb some of the punishment and some of the hits that he'll be taking at the NFL level. Moving on to the next strength of Trubisky's game, he has very good accuracy and ball placement in general, especially to the short and intermediate areas of the field in that 0 to 20 yard range, but he has a pretty solid deep ball I think as well. When you go beyond 20 yards, he can hit those throws with good touch and placement, although he's a little less consistent there, but definitely solid in that area. Also, he displays good touch to each level of the field, particularly the short and intermediate areas, as I discussed, with the accuracy and ball placement strength. Moving on to arm strength, Trubisky displays adequate to good arm strength. I don't think he has a cannon, but he has enough zip on those deep outs and those opposite hash throws that you don't worry about his arm strength being an issue for him at the next level. He should be able to zip the ball into tight windows just fine, and that's the most important thing with arm strength, I think. Moving on to the next strength of Trubisky's game, he has a quick release and a good throwing motion. Very little wasted movement in his motion, compact, gets the ball up quickly, and that's what you want for an NFL quarterback, so that it limits the amount of time that a defender has to react to the ball. So he gets the ball up quick, and he meets that requirement that you're looking for in an NFL quarterback prospect. Moving on to the next strength of Trubisky, he has very good timing. A lot of the North Carolina offense, I think, was built on timing-based routes, and he gets the ball out on time and accurately delivers on those timing-based routes like the comebacks and hitches and so forth. So he already has that developed, which is an important part, especially of a West Coast offense in the NFL. So he should be able to adapt and translate well with the timing trait that he already has in his game. Trubisky also displays some anticipation. He doesn't throw receivers open often, but he can do it when he needs to. Can throw receivers open and anticipate throwing windows fairly well, and that can continue to develop, I think, at the next level when it's required of him more often. Another strength of Trubisky's game, in my opinion, is that he displays good poise in the pocket. He's willing to stand in the pocket, be patient, and take hits and deliver the ball when pressure is bearing down on him. Doesn't affect his decision-making or accuracy too much. In fact, I think that his ability to throw accurately under pressure is one of his biggest strengths, and one of the most important things, I think, to look for when you're scouting a quarterback. So pressure doesn't affect his accuracy or decision making too much, and that, I think, is one of Trubisky's best traits. Another strength of Trubisky's, in my opinion, he has good field vision. He does read the full field on occasion, but he's not asked to do that very often. But still, generally, he goes through his second or third read pretty frequently, and makes good decisions, doesn't miss wide open receivers too often, just sees the field well, and he's quick through his progressions as well, and that's another important thing, and one of his best traits in my opinion. Moving on, kind of related to that field vision, he displays good eye discipline. He doesn't stare down receivers very often. It's actually pretty rare. I've seen him do it like maybe once a game or less, but usually not more than like once a game, most of the time. So that's another important trait, because he's not giving away his attentions before he throws the ball and allowing defenders to key on his eyes and make a play on the ball instead of allowing his receiver to make a play on the ball. Another trait that Trubisky brings to the table, positive trait, is his decision making, which is generally good. He's more of a calculated risk taker because he's fairly aggressive, but he doesn't just take unnecessary risks all the time. Generally takes calculated risks and doesn't put the ball at risk unnecessarily. So decision making, I would say, is one of Trubisky's best traits, and an important trait for your quarterback prospect to have. Another trait that I like about Trubisky, he displays some clutch ability and some mental toughness. Just looking at the Pittsburgh game, for example, he orchestrated a pretty big comeback, led a few touchdown drives, and scored in like the last couple seconds on a touchdown drive, and converted a lot of third and fourth downs, critical third and fourth downs to pull that one out for North Carolina. And also the Stanford game, even though they lost, Trubisky threw 2 interceptions. He was really struggling early, but then he led his team down the field, marched down the field, and got his team in the end zone. And then they needed a 2-point conversion, but the offensive line just completely failed them. Otherwise, they probably would have tied it up. And the best thing about that drive was that he threw 3 touchdown passes, but they were dropped, and then he still got it, and he still found a way to get it done. So I think that tells a lot about Trubisky's mental toughness, just that particular game and that drive. All right, so those are the strengths. Oh, I also forgot to mention with his accuracy, he's pretty solid on the move. So yeah, get that in there before I get into the weaknesses. I think first and foremost, the biggest knock you'll hear about Trubisky is that he's inexperienced. He only has 1 year of starting experience and 13 career starts, to be exact. That's a fairly small sample size, smaller than you would like to evaluate a quarterback upon, but I think it's enough. I think it's a decent sample size. I think people are more concerned. I don't know, people bring up that he didn't beat out Marquise Williams last year for the starting job, but I think that was more of a seniority thing. I watched Marquise Williams last year, and while he was a solid college quarterback, he wasn't a very good NFL prospect, probably a borderline tryout player. But Trubisky, when I watched Trubisky this year, I think he's a pretty high-end quarterback prospect, so I don't think that Trubisky has improved that much from last year, and I don't think he just wasn't good enough last year to win the starting job. I think it's probably just a seniority thing that Marquise Williams was good enough, and because he was the elder statesman, they just kind of went with him because they were winning games with him. So, and it was just out of respect, I think, for what he had done for the program. Anyways, moving on to the next weakness of Trubisky's game, or area for concern, I guess. He has the basic spread offense system translation questions, like can he command a huddle, can he make the pre-snap adjustments, let's see what else, can he execute the pro-style footwork, read a defense from under center, all of those things, the typical questions that you see that are asked about spread quarterbacks apply here, as Mitch Trubisky played a nice spread offense, a variation of the spread at North Carolina. So, anyways, getting into the next flaw of Trubisky's game, I think the biggest adjustment for him will be pre-snap, just being responsible for more, just having more responsibilities pre-snap. I think that's going to be the biggest adjustment for him. And one of the things that I think he could do better is recognizing pressure pre-snap. I've noticed times where the defense is showing pressure and he either doesn't make a adjustment with the protection, or find his hot read right away, and he just takes sacks instead, or gets rushed and it's an incompletion, or he just gets hit. So I think he needs to do a better job of recognizing pressure pre-snap. Also, he can get baited by disguised coverages. I think because of his inexperience, he probably hasn't seen all of these disguised looks that were thrown at him, like in the bowl game against Stanford and Virginia Tech. I think he's just not used to that, but I think that's something that can improve with experience, but it definitely it's one of the bigger concerns, I think, with his game, and it's something that he'll definitely have to improve at if he wants to be a successful NFL quarterback. Anyways, moving on to the next area for concern with Trubisky, he displays, I think, average pocket awareness, in my opinion. At times he's late to feel pressure, and that leads to some unnecessary sacks. Although he does keep his eyes downfield pretty much at all times. I can't recall a time where I've seen him drop his eyes under pressure. So he has that going for him, but he needs to do a better job of feeling the rush, I think, and then maneuvering in the pocket to get away from the rush. But it's okay right now. I think that could develop a little bit with experience, but I think that's more innate generally, so that's probably one of the bigger areas for concern with his game. Anyways, moving on. And this one may be borderline nitpicking, but I think that Trubisky could be a little better with his ball placement on moving throws when he's rolling outside of the pocket and he's throwing to his receivers on the move. He can be a little inconsistent with his ball placement, can place it a little off target within the strike zone, but it could be a little low, a little high, a little too far out to the side. So I think he could develop more consistency with his ball placement on moving throws. And then lastly, I think that Trubisky's mechanics under pressure could improve. Sometimes when he's pressured, actually a fair number of times, fair percentage of times when he's pressured, and he has pressure right in his face before he's throwing, he kind of leans away from the throw or throws off his back foot instead of following through with his motion, and that can affect his accuracy somewhat, although there are a lot of times when he can throw like accurately and have success throwing from awkward angles and off platform, but I think to develop more consistency under pressure, he could do a better job with maintaining his mechanics in the face of pressure. Yeah, those are my general thoughts on Mitch Trubisky and his skill set, basically. As far as grade for him is concerned, I have him at an 83 out of 100, which is pretty much a mid to late first round area. Although I don't necessarily give out a lot of first round grades every year, so that could place him higher on the big board or lower depending on the strength of the class. Most likely he'll end up in the top 10, probably. Lower end of the top 10 is where I see him on my board. And as far as projection is concerned in the actual draft, I think that he'll probably go top 3 to one of the quarterback needy teams picking in those slots at Cleveland or San Francisco or Chicago. I expect one of those teams to bite and take a chance on Mitch Trubisky. As far as floor ceiling for Trubisky, I think that he has a fairly high floor. I think he's at worst like Alex Smith, maybe Ryan Tannehill, and I think his ceiling is fairly high as well. I think that he could be maybe like Matt Ryan, maybe not this year Matt Ryan, but the good Matt Ryan of a few years ago, the top 10-ish Matt Ryan, you could say. So yeah, those are my basic thoughts on Mitch Trubisky, and stay tuned for more prospect breakdowns as I will be coming out with those soon. Continuing with quarterbacks, I'll have Deshaun Kaiser, Deshaun Watson, and Patrick Mahomes for sure. I should be able to get to those guys, and I might even go deeper than that into some day 3 guys. So stay tuned for that, and thanks for watching.